It sounds like you do a lot. Sorry.
Hey-o.
Hey-o. I'm sure you're making sound puns like 24/7.
All the time.
Oh, God.
You're in good company.
I'm trying to think of course, I'm not as quick as you. I was trying to think of something more sound related as a pun, but Foley moly.
I was
My God.
trying to think of I'm staring at you trying to think of a Foley pun.
Me too.
Being like
Foley moly.
Your
got Brandon.
faults. I was like, this is your fault. Something that's just terrible.
Wow.
The Foley of
God.
Leanne.
The Foley of Leanne.
God, I know there's more out there, but they're escaping me right now.
Welcome to our podcast.
Today on Sips and Clips, we're joined by Brandon Jones, sound designer, re-recording mixer, and supervising sound editor extraordinaire. We break down Brandon's career starting from his roots as student number one in the classical guitars program at Pepperdine, to student films at UCLA, to sound restoration for Hollywood classics, to the world of massive studio blockbusters. We talk about his early breakthrough on The Gallows, the fundamentals of great sound editing, the hierarchy of the sound department, and the art behind sound design on projects like Detective Pikachu, Quiet Place, 13 Hours, and the Lego Movie 2. We also get into some spirited debates, like where dialogue levels really should sit, and the philosophical nature of deep dish Chicago pizza.
Welcome to this episode of Sips and Clips. My name is Leanne McFalls.
My name is Michael Schusterman.
And today we have got a lovely person. Brandon Jones is here. Brandon, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Brandon Jones. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming in. How would you describe yourself? What would you say that you do?
So I would describe myself, I'm a sound designer, but I also am occasionally a re-recording mixer. And when possible, I'm a sound supervisor as well, or supervising sound editor.
Wow, so you just cover all of sound.
I try. Yes. That's what you have to do.
So you're just a one-man show over here, aren't you?
One-man band.
Yeah, one-man band. We have to start with what we're sipping on. And we're recording this later at night, people. So let's see what Michael's got.
Michael's got a Canada Dry Zero Sugar. It's got a lot of words. Since 1904, Canada Dry caffeine-free zero sugar ginger ale. My tummy hurts, so I'm drinking a ginger ale.
Aww.
Really exciting.
My tummy's been hurting too, and guess what I've been having to drink? Almond lattes.
Oh, is it actually an almond latte?
I had an iced chai almond latte today. What are you sipping on, Brandon?
So I today have a kombucha. How
Ooh.
LA is that?
Oh, yes.
But I found my favorite flavor. It's elderberry juniper.
Oh,
They have
a
grapefruit one that I'm obsessed with whenever I see it. It's like the pink one because they used to serve it at the Fox Commissary. And you could go there and buy it, and it was fabulous. And I would drink that like every single day.
I try to limit myself. I know some people that drink these every day.
For like 4 of them a day.
I try to just do like 1 or 2 a week. That's good for me.
Yeah.
What are you sipping on?
I am sipping on one of those Noon tablets. I'm not just like drinking the tablet, but I put the tablet in water.
What is a Noon tablet?
I think it's pronounced
no clue.
Noon. It's like Nuun.
Never heard of this.
Huh.
It's just an electrolyte tablet.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
especially I like it, because it's, you put it in water, and mine is orange flavored.
We should hop into it. We always like to start with just kind of like a general overview of like your story. How did you discover filmmaking? Where did you grow up? When did you move out to Los Angeles?
Were you always into sound, or did you come across it?
Great question. So it is kind of a meandering story, so forgive me if I'm going off on tangents. But I grew up outside of Chicago, a little town called Wheaton, Illinois. I think my love of film came from my parents because ever since I was a little kid, we always did Sunday night movie night. And my dad would make a big thing of popcorn, and he would slice up cheese and apples, and we'd all go downstairs, turn off all the lights. We took it really seriously. Like if someone had to use the bathroom, you pause it, you get up, you come back, everyone waits, and then you start the movie again. So it was very serious. And we'd go out to movies too. The first time I saw Terminator 2 in the theater, and then the first Jurassic Park movie, those were like really impactful for me.
Both of those two have very impactful sound as well.
Well, strangely enough, they were done by the same guy, the great Gary Rydstrom. But I remember being in the theater seeing Jurassic Park for the first time, and that was the first time that I was truly terrified from a movie, and the sound really was impactful. So anyway, many years later, I never really had any occasion to study film, outside of Chicago. There wasn't really much going on there. And I got totally obsessed with guitar when I was a teenager. So that laser focus, that's what I wanted to do with my life.
Acoustic or electric?
Neither. Classical.
Oh,
classical guitar.
Wow.
Yeah. My parents had this box set, this classical guitarist, one of the greatest in the world. His name is Christopher Parkening. And I would listen to his CD, and at, 15, 16, I was like, that's what I want to do with my life. So I took it very seriously. I had lessons, and several years later, I actually got the opportunity to play for that guy, Christopher Parkening. My dad flew me out to LA. I played in a master class for him, and I got to sit, 5 feet from him.
Oh my God.
Hands shaking and totally just completely scared. But he was the nicest guy, very encouraging. He actually took me aside after the whole thing was done and said, hey, I'm actually going to be slowing down my touring and recording. I want to become a professor. Would you want to be a student of mine? And I said, heck yeah.
Wow.
Name the place, I'll be there.
How old are you at this
time
point?
frame?
So I started classical when I was 15 years old. And when I played in that master class, I was 17. I was a senior in high school.
What year is this?
1999?
99. Okay.
99.
Turn of the century.
Yeah. That's back when we were all worried about Y2K.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's essentially what brought me out to LA to study with this guy,
Wow.
Christopher Parkening. And he ended up being hired
Just
at
at a
Pepperdine.
conservatory? Oh, do you read Pepperdine? Okay.
Yeah, he got hired at Pepperdine. It was like a brand new department.
Wow.
They never had a classical guitar department there, so I was their student number one in that department. I studied there my whole undergrad. I was, again, laser focused in classical guitar. Graduated, got a master's at USC, also in classical guitar. I spent 2 years at USC, and I never took a single film class.
Wow. I was going to ask if during these years, if there was anything, because I'm assuming that you still have to take gen eds. Is that correct?
Yes.
So was there, I guess there wasn't any type of
not at that point
film
in my life.
Interest. Yeah.
I mean, I still really loved film, and I was always curious about how it was made. But
you were so
focused on being the next Christopher Parkening. I wanted to have a concert guitarist career. But things changed after I graduated from USC, and I was teaching private lessons and just gigging as much as I could. And classical guitar is a very niche.
I was gonna say that's pretty specific.
Yeah. I mean, you can't just get a day job at an orchestra somewhere.
Right.
It's a very small little world that we live in. There's only room for a few top dogs at the very, very top. And even then, the industry was changing. Long story short, I got married right after I graduated from Pepperdine. That was 2005. And then I went to USC from 2005 to 2007. And then right around that time, we had our first kid. And it was okay, I have to figure something out here because we have a mouth to feed. My wife was a nurse, and she wanted to stay home with the kid. And I was barely making any money with classical guitar. I was teaching lessons and gigging as much as I could. So eventually I asked my old guitar teacher, Christopher Parkening, and said, hey, is there any way I could maybe get into the sound world? Maybe I could become a record producer or something. Do you know anybody you could connect me with? And he recommended me to this little studio in Burbank called Audio Mechanics. But when I ended up going there and interviewing, they have this whole other side of the industry where they do sound restoration for film. So they would take old classic movies, clean it up again, redo, not redo the audio, but take out pops and clicks and splices and
make it sound a little bit smoother.
Make it a little more modern. So I got a job there, and it ended up being really great training for me because I got to learn all the old formats. I learned what mag was, optical. We'd even do transfers there from old tapes and everything. So I was learning all these things like how to dialogue edit because you would have to be you'd have to be really creative to find ways to fix problems in the audio track. If there's a splice right in the middle of a word, you have to go find another word that sounds similar to that, or a syllable that you could edit over.
When you had this job, what was your, title? What would you say that you were?
So I was a restoration engineer, but I was really a sound editor now that I look back on it. But it was non-union. It wasn't part of our structure right now. So even though I was working on studio films, they were all really old, like from the 50s and 60s or
Right.
earlier. So
Were these just going to Turner Classic Movies and stuff like that?
pretty much. Yeah. And sometimes they would have like a 25th anniversary re-release or a new DVD special.
We're
or something.
restoring Sound of Music or something.
Yes.
Or let's go take a look at the sound and see what we can clean up.
That's how they do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a feeling that's how they did it, but like, I wasn't so sure.
Now you know.
I'm just curious, do you have all the stems for these things, or is it all just the original? You only have the mix track from the prints?
It really depends. Like the older movies, a lot of the times you would just have a print master.
Yeah.
Everything's
Baked into one
mono
thing.
track. Dialogue, effects, music, it's all there in one track and you have to make do. And that was really challenging to fix sometimes some pretty serious problems that were in the track. And this particular company was really good at trying to find as many different sources. Like usually it's not just one print that exists. Sometimes there's a few things that you can draw from. So this is the best sounding print, but there's a problematic part. So we're going to use this other source. I remember at one point we got to see the original mags for the first Alien movie from 1979.
Wow.
And that was just really, really cool. Alien was an interesting one because they had so many different versions of that movie and it was being screened all over the world. So sometimes we'd listen to a version that would have some new content in it, like a different sound effect. And that's not in another version. Yeah, there's certain things that were like, whoa, what's going on here?
Okay, so you're working at this restoration facility and you discover, I'm good at this, I like this, this could be a career.
So that's when I really started to, my interest was piqued in sound design, and I just started reading online, and honestly, I went on Craigslist and started to try to find sound design gigs. My first gig was for $200 for a UCLA student film.
Wow.
Amazing.
That guy worked me so hard because I thought, $200, 10 minutes long, how hard could it be, right? But it was, this was his baby. This was like his thesis film. And we ended up spending I was probably getting paid 50 cents per hour by the end. It was just.
You probably spend more time on that 10 minutes than you have on feature films.
Yeah.
Wow. When you started out and you were still like learning this landscape, did you have an end goal in mind that you wanted to get to? Were you like, okay, I learned there's a supervising sound editor, there's a sound designer, there's there's a re-recording mixer. Is most of it freelance still? You're just kind of hopping around from thing to thing?
It was all freelance in those early days. And I ended up becoming kind of the guy for UCLA student films.
Oh, so you did like a barbershop.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I ended up just from word of mouth doing a lot of them. And then I kind of built off of that.
Did you have an end goal in mind? Like, did you have a job you wanted to get to?
I did. I wanted to be a sound designer on big studio feature
Okay, that was the goal.
Yeah, that was the goal. But then, of course, now I have more goals. So
Yeah, but at the time.
At the time, yes.
But the sound designer, that's it. So the sound designer is that the head of the department, or would that be the supervising sound editor?
That would be the supervising sound editor.
Okay.
Yeah. So the hierarchy, as it were, even though these lines are being blurred all the time, especially now, but the supervising sound editor, sometimes called the sound supervisor, they oversee the sound designers, the sound editors, the assistant sound editors, the Foley team.
That would be our picture editor.
Sure.
Our creative head of the department.
Exactly. And then the supervising sound editor also oversees all things dialogue and everything. You're deciding what fits in to the tone of the movie.
Okay.
As the picture editor, you're trying to do everything to make the picture fit the tone. So
Now, I want to get back and to still keep talking about your journey, but while we're on the topic, the logistical coordination between editorial and the other departments is normally handled by the first. Do you have something similar? Is there somebody who in a sound, quote unquote, cutting room is not really dealing with necessarily the creative, but more of the logistical execution of stuff that needs to happen?
that would probably just be the assistant sound editor. But a lot of these logistical things you're talking about, and especially with the communication between departments, a lot of that falls to the supervising sound editor.
That does fall
in
to
the
them.
sound world. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because they're the ones who are really kind of steering the ship logistically. The assistant sound editor is very much in tune with, like, they have a direct line of communication all the time with the picture department and make sure everything technically works.
Gotcha. So if they're like, hey, we really need those new VFX shots to look at it for sound, like the assistant sound editor is the one reaching out.
More often than not, yes. But it totally depends on the size of the crew. And if you have a big team, sometimes that you can have clear tasks for people like that. But a lot of the times the lines are blurred between these tasks now, and smaller crews, more work falls on less people.
I do feel like sometimes when I work on movies, sometimes our sound is taken care of by like a company, but then sometimes it feels like we're using freelancers in the same way that like we do for an offline cutting room? What's more common, that sound people are generally part of a company, or that they're all being brought together like a movie, freelancers all brought together onto a team?
It's more the latter. I'm noticing a trend to have it more be about the freelancers than anything. Back in the old days, you would have clear companies that had people stay there for decades. And there's still, those companies, some of them still exist, like Formosa, but it's not so much that Formosa is doing your sound. It's that, you're hiring this particular supervisor or this particular sound designer. It's more freelance, like
so maybe
more individual.
Formosa is almost and these companies are more of a producing entity that they're hiring the actual team to come on. Like they don't have a re-recorder on staff. They may hire a re-recorder to come on and do it.
Correct. So, and I think it's becoming more and more freelance and less structured because, to be honest, I think a lot of these companies don't want the overhead of having people on staff all the time.
I see, yeah.
And so I think that's kind of the trend now, is to not have people on contract, not have people, drawing a salary, as it were. You just get.
That makes sense. Getting back to your story, so you're the go-to guy for the Bruins. They're like, we need him. We got to get Brandon. He's the best guy for our theses.
Which is funny because I went to USC, but I must have kept that under wraps.
Gotta get Brandon. Did you get Brandon on yours? I did get Brandon on mine. Oh my God, you got to use him. You got to use him.
So at what point did you leave the orbit of that and you started moving towards, more...
The bigger feature films?
Yeah, or television shows or whatever.
So it was really gradual at first. It was kind of like a 7-year period that I really, really wanted so badly to get in the union and start working on big movies, but I just couldn't really break in. And I was,
why not?
Cold calling, and I don't know. I honestly don't. I think I knew so little about the industry that I didn't even know where to start. And in retrospect, I feel like I was doing a lot of the wrong things. I was doing okay for the small time independent stuff that I was getting, because I was building my own little network, and I started doing some feature, like very low budget feature films. So I was like reaching that network of people, but I was just waiting for my big break, and it just wasn't really happening. And so if you call up a place like Formosa or Sound Deluxe and say, hey, here's all these independent UCLA student films that I worked on, can you hire me? They're not going to take you seriously unless you've worked on something big. So it was really, it was a tough few years for me to kind of like figure out how I was going to go about this. But what's the old saying, like luck meets opportunity or something? What is that? What do they say? I'm totally butchering it.
Luck plus preparation equals opportunity. Yeah.
There you go.
Something like that.
So that's kind of what happened to me. So I was hired by a couple filmmakers up in Fresno, these really sweet guys named Travis and Chris. I did a really low budget horror movie for them. I think my fee for that was like $7,000.
What was the movie?
It's called The Gallows. It's a found footage horror movie.
I've heard of it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So they hired me.
As we said, I don't like horror, so I have never seen it or know anything about it, but I've heard of it.
Oh gosh.
When did that come out?
It came out in 2015.
Yeah, it was recent. I thought it was recent. Okay.
But that was a long chapter in my life, because they hired me in 2012 with the very first cut. Yes. I worked on and off on that movie for 3 years. They came to me with a very early cut, and there was even different actors in it and everything.
Oh my God.
And it was so low budget, but it was really well done. They had something. So I worked on that. I got it really dialed in. And then they started shopping the movie around.
Well, you said that you were on and off of this for about 3 years. When you say on and off, what does that look like? Is that like, oh, they called me up for a month, now I'm done for 6. They called me up or is it the opposite? They called me up for 6 months, now I'm off for a month.
The first stretch, I was on it for like 3 months straight, just doing the movie, first stretch, and getting it to a point where we final mixed it. And they had a nice package. They had a movie that they could go shop around town. So that was like, they hired me in 2012, 3 or 4 months later. That's when they were shopping it around. So I pretty much didn't hear from them for about 6 months.
Okay.
And then they said, guess what? Blumhouse wants to acquire it.
Wow.
But they want to do some reshoots. They want to restructure some things. So I think the next year was very on and off. I would do like a month with them, and then I would be off for a month or two, and then we'd be on again for a month, and they were reshooting it. They were shooting it.
Were they just cutting it themselves?
They were cutting it themselves and doing all the VFX and everything.
Were you also doing other gigs at this time, or were you just like, okay?
So I was
like,
still.
How were you juggling being on and off and being like, hey, we need you for for 3 months and you're like, well,
Well, here's the crazy part. I was still working full time at Audio Mechanics.
Oh, you
doing sound
were?
restoration.
Okay.
So this was on the side. And
Okay.
my boss was the coolest guy. My boss at Audio Mechanics was the coolest guy. He let me use the studio spaces on weekends and evenings.
Oh,
free of charge.
cool.
He said
Awesome.
he knew about it. He knew I was doing all these freelance gigs.
So you were on and off this for 3 years, and then they
Yes.
shopped it around, and
Blumhouse acquired it, and then Warner Brothers acquired it, and they wanted to do worldwide distribution for this little indie horror film. And so I think at that point, Dolby Atmos was becoming more of a thing, and I think they were really
it like just about started like 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
Right. And at that time they were doing, like, Dolby was actually shelling out a lot of money doing promotional deals with people. Like they were saying, hey, we'll pay for your Atmos mix. Just do it so we can, get more movies that are Atmos certified or in Atmos. So they donated a free Atmos mix for this movie.
Wow.
So I ended up on a stage with Anna Belmer. She is one of those mixers that I've idolized my whole life. I've followed her career. I never in a million years thought I would be on a mix stage with her. Here I am. I'm like totally self-taught in terms of sound design. And I'm having to give my tracks to Anna Belmer. So again, I was so super nervous, but she was so sweet. She was so kind and encouraging, and she loved it. She thought it sounded great.
Wow.
And by the end, she was like, wait, so what are you working on after this? And I said, well, I've got another UCLA student film coming.
That's a great answer.
Oh, God.
And she went, you're wasting your fucking time. What are you doing?
So she, right then, this was the last day, she's like, Wait, no, you're not even in the union? No, come on. And so she called up Ethan Vanderrine and Eric Adol, who run E Squared. So anyway, she was the one who got me my big break and introduced me to those guys. And so they hired me shortly after that. At the time, I thought, I got this. I know what I'm doing. I know a little bit of sound design, but oh man, when I joined up at E Squared, I quickly realized how far behind I was and how much I had to learn. They were very kind to hire me with so little experience. I think they just maybe saw potential or something. But
And what were you hired as?
Sound effects editor, entry level, scale. It got me in the union.
Yeah. So in this instance, you're now working for this company as opposed to freelancing.
Technically, it is a sound company, but it's a company of freelancers. So I actually was never on contract or anything.
Okay.
It's all freelance basis, but they're a busy sound company. They always have 3 or 4 movies going on all the time.
So you were basically just rolling from one show to the next, effectively.
Yeah. I was there straight for 6 years. With them, I mean, I was hired for one gig. They never really spoke to me about my future or how long that I was going to be there. I think they just wanted to see how it went, and they didn't want to commit to anything. I mean, they were trying me out on that first movie, which was Michael Bay's 13 Hours. That was my first union show. Of course, with a Michael Bay movie, you're going to end up working a lot of overtime. And so my first union show is that, and I pull all-nighters all the time, working every weekend, and I thought, oh my gosh, is this like what it's like to work in the union?
Was it just that they gave you one of the hardest jobs just to test you out and see how you did?
They threw me in the deep end. They were like, okay, if he can survive this, there might be something there. After that, everything seems easy.
I'm curious, at E2, you're a sound effects editor. Is that just a title, or is that like a literal description of what you do? Like, you are not allowed to touch dialogue. You are not allowed to touch music, anything else. Or is that just a title?
I feel like those delineations between the titles is pretty much all out the window. I mean, I was... At E Squared especially, I was doing sound design. I was doing all sorts of things.
Okay, so it wasn't just like you weren't just cutting Foley. It was like, oh, you are doing anything that is requested of you.
Cutting full reels, like start to finish.
Conforming
conforming everything.
Okay.
So yeah, those job titles, they still are a thing, but they kind of more refer to, they used to be very clear delineations that, like you were talking about, like as a sound effects editor, you are not creating sounds. You are taking the sounds that that the sound designer made, and then you were cutting them to picture. Back in the day, they had them very clearly specified to where sometimes the sound designer wasn't even cutting things to picture. Like they were just creating the sounds, and then they would hand the reels over to their sound effects editor to actually put them on the machine and get them in the sync and everything. It was very much more clearly delineated back then. Nowadays, sound effects editors, you have to have some level of sound design just to get by, just to be able to put things together and be creative and figure out solutions for problems.
I have a question since you have now brought this up. I know this is not a thing anymore, but for the longest time, the Oscars had Oscar for sound mixer and Oscar for sound design. And I would always get because people knew I was in film and they would always be like, what's the difference between sound design and sound mix? And I could kind of tell them, but I wanted to know in your words, sound designer, sound mixer, and sound editor, what differentiates them? What does each why do you think that they might have split this Oscar into two? What would make a film be good for sound design but not sound mixing? So
I think you're watching a movie and you don't know what goes into it. It's kind of hard to tell what came from a really, really good mix or a really good sound design.
The sausage is tasty. You don't know if it's the seasoning or the meat.
It's all a collective thing.
Such a weird analogy.
That makes sense, right?
It's a beautiful way of saying it. Beautiful.
You had to use that
very
word.
Graphic.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
That's what I literally was like, oh, it's like a sausage. You know? You eat the sausage, you know it tastes good. You just don't know, how it was prepared.
Sorry, my brain went to the gutter on that one. So
like a bratwurst.
I know what you mean. Oh my God. Just the use of that. Anyway.
You guys should all get bratwurst pins that you wear around. You're like, sound editing, sound is like a bratwurst. You know?
Jeez.
Like you don't want to know how it's made.
You don't want to know how it's made.
You don't want to know how it's made. Okay, so then as the job, sound designer, sound mixer, sound editor, what do each of those do in the actual behind the scenes?
So sound designer is responsible for creating the signature sounds for that particular movie. So that means recording, that means going out and sourcing all these things. You're the one who has to creatively think, okay, this particular creature, it looks like it has a little avian part to it. So maybe I can record this kind of bird. And they're the ones trying to think really outside the box of like, what could I collect? What could I record? What could I combine and layer and process?
So I'm just curious
create the sound for this thing.
Because this sounds like a cool job and it sounds like a cool thing. But I kind of feel like most other films are like a procedural cop drama on a movie.
What are they doing for something like that?
Yeah, something that's just expected. The sounds are expected. They're not original.
Straightforward, as it were. You're not wrong. Like some gigs are easier than others.
Do they always have a sound designer? Is there almost always a sound designer on a feature?
Typically for, sometimes for like period dramas or things that are really like a walk and talk, sometimes there won't be a sound designer. There'll just be a supervising sound editor and sound effects editors.
So the West Wing, it's like West Wing may not have a sound designer in it.
Right. It may not. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. The sound designer for West Wing is out there like shaking his fist at me.
I'll never let you forget about me.
I think some movies may not need a traditional sound designer, but even for a movie like Heat, though, guns are actually not.
They're not quite straightforward.
They're not as straightforward as you would think.
You're like, what does this gun sound like when fired in a mall? Like that's going to sound different than a gun fired on a shooting firing range.
And then you also think about character too. Sometimes your hero's gun will sound a little different than others.
It's not just about being practical. It's about doing things that are not normal in order to create an emotional thing.
Well, and also, you can really tell what kind of movie you're in by the way the gun sounds. Like a Western will have a very different sounding guns than like a really gritty drama that's supposed to be really like just realistic and put you in there. And look at the opening of Saving Private Ryan. Those are just quote guns and explosions, but it's one of the most beautifully intricate things, sound design moments in cinema history. And so if you just point a microphone at a gun, record it, and then put that in a movie, you're going to be very disappointed. It's going to sound like a click. It's going to sound like a pop. It's a transient with no tail. A lot has to be done to it to get to the point where it sounds like a Hollywood gunshot.
I see. And that kind of creative direction would be coming from a sound designer.
Yes. Well, and a lot of the times when you record the literal thing that's on the screen, it doesn't sound right when you play it back.
And are the sound designer really giving the creative notes? Like you're a sound effects editor, you send your sequence off, whatever, for review to the sound designer. And the sound designer goes, no, like the monster's footsteps need to sound wetter.
So again, it really depends on the team, but I know the way things worked at E Squared, Ethan and Eric were the bosses and they were the ones giving the notes. But sometimes they would have a sound designer working on a particular movie who would kind of manage the crew under that person. So sometimes I would get notes from the sound designer, but then we collectively were responsible to Ethan and Eric, and they were the ones who were kind of overseeing everything. And then, of course, they're getting notes from the clients, the director and the picture editor and stuff.
Would a sound designer also be responsible for like the room tone or like maybe the ambient noise? Like if they're walking outside for these more basic movies or basic scenes, is that also what they're hired to do as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes that stuff is kind of relegated if it's a little more straightforward. Sometimes it'll be relegated to the sound effects editor, the cutting the doors, the cars, the ambience and stuff like that.
Footsteps?
Footsteps would be the Foley department.
Oh, Foley.
So,
okay.
Yeah, but which that falls under the supervising sound editor is overseeing all that, but that's the Foley department.
Okay. So now that we've got a full understanding of what a sound designer does.
Yes.
What does a sound mixer do?
Sound mixer. So they are the ones, it's usually a 2-mixer team for feature films. So you'll have one mixer, and this is when you're in the dub stage with that huge console in the front. You'll have on the left-hand side, you'll have one mixer who's handling the music.
Question, but I've always wondered this. Why is it called the dub stage?
Wikipedia says, dubbing is a post-production process used in filmmaking, and the video production process where supplementary recordings known as doubles are lip-synced and mixed with original production audio to create the final product.
Interesting. So it's the doubling stage, which eventually becomes the dubbing stage, which eventually becomes the dub stage.
There you go. Little sound history lesson
which would
for
explain
everybody.
dubstep, which is like sound samples used to make music.
There you go.
Gosh. All these connections are forming in my
I'm
brain.
beautiful minding.
I know,
all
my brain has
right
been
now.
This is a major breakthrough here.
Wow.
On 60
a breakthrough.
All right, that makes sense.
Time to go to commercial now.
And the term dubbing also commonly refers to replacement of actors' voices because it's the double of the language.
Yeah. So re-recording mixer. Okay, so they're the ones that on the dub stage, you'll have on one side, one re-recording mixer that does the dialogue and music. And then on the other side is the effects re-recording mixer.
I never knew that. They do different things.
They do different things, yes.
I've always seen two, but I always thought they were just doing the same thing together. I didn't realize they were split up.
On one side, it's music and dialogue, and the other side, it's effects. Now, most of the time, traditionally, that's the way it's done. There are a few mixing teams that do it a little differently. I know on some filmmakers, they prefer the effects and music to get mixed together, and then dialogue, and sometimes Foley.
I was going to ask why those pairing.
Music and
I guess it's
dialogue
different,
versus effects.
I feel like that it would make more sense in my head for kind of what you just said of sound effects and music, because the dialogue needs to stand out. And then music and sound effects kind of need to work together.
I think it probably had to do with technical limitations back then, because honestly, dialogue sessions have less tracks. Effects, we notoriously give like thousands of tracks.
That makes sense.
And then music's the same way, especially when you have like 7/1 stems. You'll have
like
200 tracks of 7/1 stems come in. And you just can't put all that and effects on the same, on the same board. So I think part of it is just necessity and tradition.
The board that I see them mixing in, do they have a Pro Tools session that's open and they're hopping into stuff? Or are they like, this slider is footsteps and then this slider is clothes rustle and we're just simplifying it? Or like, do they have a Pro Tools project where they're like, I'm popping open the boot sound effect onto this slider?
Right.
You only have so many sliders, but if you've got hundreds of tracks full of different things, I'm just curious how how does that work?
Most of the time now, what you're talking about is happening. Like the console is a controller. It's like a control surface for a Pro Tools session. So
that's running in the background.
What you're doing on the faders, you can see live happening on the Pro Tools rig. So the mixers level the three categories, dialogue, music, and effects. They level everything, EQ, volume, they make sure everything coheses together in a beautiful mix at the end of the day. So that's what the re-recording mixers do.
And this is being done before the director and the editor are coming into the dub stage. This is just them doing it by themselves in a Pro Tools project somewhere.
Usually they have several days where they go through it themselves. That's the pre-dubbing stage. So just sometimes they'll go in separate rooms and work only on effects and only on dialogue. But then when they come together in the final mix, that's when they put all the ingredients together and they start to level things. And
is that normally being done on a stage, or is that just being done on a computer somewhere in an office with speakers?
The pre-dubbing or
the pre-dub.
That's on the stage as well.
That's on that. It's still on the proper big stage. So you're doing it in there. Okay.
Like you're probably mixing your sound effects in your own room.
Yes.
And then when you get to the pre-dub stage, when everything comes together,
it's getting
that's
remixed,
when everything is on
again.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So as I'm cutting, if I'm doing sound design or cutting effects for a scene, I always, and I recommend this to all people who are young and coming up, cut against the music and dialogue tracks, because that will tell you a lot. That will force you to cut differently. If you're trying to cut effects for a scene that has really loud thumping techno music through the whole thing, you're going to have to make different decisions with your sound to make it cut through better and still sound full and rich. But if your sound effects are exposed and it's a really intimate scene between two characters, you want your sound effects to be subdued and not to stick out and not draw attention. So anyway, in our rooms, as we cut effects, we try to level everything against the dialogue and music. But then there's only so far you can go before you put it all together on a dub stage and actually hear it in a big room like that, especially the low frequency stuff. That can be very different from a small room to a big dub stage. So there's a lot of work and finessing that has to be done between an edit room and then the dub stage.
So that's mixers, and we can get a little bit more back to that. Sound editor then, are they also on the dub stage doing all this, or are they more like in the beginnings of when you guys are putting in the Yeah, I guess I'm trying to, because it sounds like you're also a sound editor and design, like
yes.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, that's my
tasks.
That was my main question, is like, okay, I understand sound designer, I understand mixers. What I don't really understand is like,
where does the
sound designer editor sounds like a supervising sound editor. How is that guy differentiating from these
Everybody
two jobs
else.
that seem like the two parts of sound, right?
Again, I hate to use this old, like, it really depends so much
Of
on
course,
the crew,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I know some supervising sound editors who are very skilled sound designers, and they're in there like doing the work, designing sounds, they're cutting a lot of the movie, blah, blah, blah. And then some sound supervisors don't actually touch a computer at all. They're all about the
emails,
managerial, the logistics, but then they also have a really clear creative choice, and they're giving notes and telling their team what to do. And I've worked with some really, really fantastic, brilliant sound supervisors who don't do the work themselves, but they know exactly what it needs. They can listen to my work, say mute this, and that, and then add this one sound, and you do what they say, and it's perfect. So it's like they're so skilled and they have so much experience to know exactly what something needs.
Okay, so then what does a sound editor do?
They're the ones usually handling conforms when they come in. They're
doing the conforms.
Yeah, they're doing the conform fixing. Sometimes the sound designer does that, but again, depends on the crew and how big the crew is. The sound effects editor is cutting the more straightforward things in the scene, doors, ambiances, stuff like that. Car engines sometimes, if it's not like the F1 movie,
Right.
Obviously
just
that
like
would
a
be
car
the sound
driving
designer.
away.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. The sound effects editor will get in there and do that.
So they're more like kind of lining up and like making sure the sound's in sync, like you said, conforming and doing maybe all of the beginning legwork. Would you say
that's the traditional role of a sound effects editor? But like I said, I've been on so many shows where you don't even have a sound effects editor at all.
From a logistical perspective, if it comes to sound, okay, I'm making a movie. I'm making a movie for Warner Brothers. I need sound for my movie. Who do I find? Who is the person I'm going to? Am I going to Formosa E2, a company? Am I going to you? Am I going to a supervising sound editor? Am I going to a sound designer? I'm just curious how this team actually, if it is a bunch of freelancers, how the hell does a sound team come together?
A lot of the times your go-to person that you would hire would be the supervising sound editor. And then sometimes the supervising sound editor will even pick the mixers. They'll pick everybody, the sound assistant, sound effects editors and everything. Sometimes the director will come and say, I have mixers that I want to work with. I just need a supervising sound editor. And then you can piece it together that way. Companies like Formosa, they have kind of their Rolodex of talent, of people that they have. Sure. And some post supervisors are comfortable working with a team like that, or with a company. And that they know that, okay, if I hire anyone within this group, I'm getting a certain caliber of talent. Sometimes they want this particular person, or they say, we don't have anyone in mind. It's a new filmmaker. What do you got? again, very different from filmmaker to filmmaker. Sometimes the director wants to make that decision. Sometimes it's the picture editor. Sometimes it's the post supervisor. Like it really depends.
And so it normally always starts with the supervising sound editor.
Yes.
It's like, that's my HOD.
Yes.
That I'm going to be the person that I'm communicating with in order to hire and build this department out. Okay, that tracks. That makes sense.
While you're the sound effects editor, and we get to the dubbing stage, and you got the sound mixer now. Sound mixer's doing their stuff. What are you doing while they're mixing? Are you
Great question.
Also working on like the next reel, or like what if you're like I feel like at that stage it's like, oh, okay, well now we've handed it off, and now what? And so I was wondering, what other stuff are you having to do?
I'll use 13 Hours as an example. That was my first union show with E Squared, and so I was kind of learning everything I needed to do on that show. Towards the end there, even after they started mixing the movie was still changing a lot, and that's typical of Michael Bay movies. While they were still mixing, we were getting new turnovers all the time. So on that particular show, we did a lot of creative work up front where you're just cutting the first pass of this whole movie. But then towards the end, you kind of become a conform monkey. You're just like every reel that comes in, you have to chop it up and then make it all clean and smooth again. And then you also have to, in the session, communicate to the mixer what's changed. Where do you need to punch in and out from? Nothing's changed from here to here, so you can skip that. And then you also have to look out for new visual effects. So, and those were changing all the time. As the sound effects editor, you were doing a lot of conforming. You're cutting new material for visual effects that comes in. Sometimes a new scene would pop in out of nowhere and like, shit, we gotta cover this real quick because it's Michael Bay's on his way over and he wants to hear it. And it's just like you have to be really fast and nimble. Sometimes they have a stage editor, someone who's there. So if anyone, the picture editor, director, anyone asks for something, hey, we're missing a bullet by there, they can quickly get on the rig, prepare that, send it over to the effects mixer, and then boom, it's in the movie.
You say sound effects editor is normally like an entry-level position. It's kind of where people start.
Well, sometimes they'll start as a sound assistant, but a lot of people these days are coming in as sound effects editors.
It seems to me like you have one of these three paths to go to. I mean, based on your career, people do hop around. Sometimes I'm the sound designer, sometimes I'm the supervising sound editor. Is that typical that you're swapping between these three hats?
Is there a clear path
for each one of these three things?
There really isn't anymore. There used to be. Back in the day, you would get hired as an apprentice or like an assistant sound editor, and then you would work your way up through apprenticeships. Nowadays, with shrinking budgets and no one wants to pay for someone to learn on the job, it's like, no, hire only who you need because that's all we're paying for. Even people at the quote unquote entry level sound effects editor, they're still required to do and know a lot, like right off the bat.
Oh, wow.
Are basically all these kids, I hate to call them kids, they're adults, but are they basically all coming out of film schools who have done sound programs and they've done 1 million short films by the time they even get to your desk? It's like, maybe we'll take a chance on this new person for this lower budget thing.
Yeah, it's really all over the map. Gosh, people ask me for advice on how to get in the industry, and I'm like, I don't even know anymore. I mean, I have my way.
Cross that question off our list over here.
Well, I'm curious because your way...
I don't know.
Your way is different. I mean, I'm probably the most recent grad from film school here.
Yes.
And basically everybody I know who now does sound for a career did 1 million short films. They had 1 million things to show for it. And then they eventually got hired at some type of sound company. And then they just started a career that way. So they got like a job at a company.
It's really hard. I mean, like the industry's changing so fast. If I were to give advice to new people, it would be diversify. Like
be a jack of all trades.
Yeah, I think doing those student films early on, because I had to do everything. I was my own Foley walker. I was my own dialogue editor. I was my own sound designer, and I did the mixing. I just learned, and I also learned client relations, how to handle different personalities and talk to people about sound and what is it that you want. So I had exposure to all those different areas of sound, and I'm really lucky in retrospect. But I feel like nowadays you really have to be diversified. If I talk to somebody who said, I want to be a Foley editor, I would say, stop right there. That's fine if that's what you want to do, but don't just focus on that. You should learn mixing. You should learn sound effects editing. You should learn sound design. Just be prepared for anything. It's going to morph and change and evolve.
And you might need to be 2 jobs on 1 job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that typical that people who at that your kind of level are doing all 3 of those jobs, or is that
It's becoming more and more so?
Because those
'Cause
seem
they
like
wanna
extremely
hire-
different skills. Like
They
my
are.
point, it's like re-recording mixer is working on a mix stage. You're responding to requests really quickly. I've seen mixers; they're the most incredible. Like they're like, make that louder, make that one tiny sound effect louder. And they're like, gotcha, and it's done. That seems exceptionally different to what the fuck does a T-Rex sound like, right? Like those are 2 completely different
skill
things.
set. But it's becoming more and more common now to wear those 2 hats. Like you're seeing a lot more supervising sound editors, re-recording mixer combos, sound designer combos. And working at a place like E Squared, there was actually some of that going on. Sometimes if you were busy on one particular show as a sound designer, sometimes you'd pop over if things got light on that particular show, or if they went on hiatus, sometimes you would just go and work in a different capacity.
This is just a fun question, but I would like to ask about 2 movies on your resume, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Now that I kind of know what these do, you have Detective Pikachu on here, and you're the sound designer. So they're coming to you and saying, here's the Pokemon. It looks like this. What do you think this sounds like? Are you listening to like the actual video games, like what they've done for their sound, and being like, okay, an Apom sounds like this in Pokemon Black. That must have been fun to be like, what does a
really
Charizard
fun.
sound like in an arena, right? Like, what does that actually sound like?
Now that was a lot of fun. We did a lot of research on the old, watching the old anime show, and then playing the app and doing recordings and all sorts of things. And because it needed to sound like fans of Pokemon
Would know if you were
needed
wrong.
to have it be, it needed to sound like that thing. But also, if you just take that literal sound and put it in a feature film on a big screen, it's not going to sound right. So it needed to be updated and modernized, but still have the soul of the actual sound.
I adore
So
this
that
movie,
was,
which is why
that was a lot of fun to work on that one. I was kind of, I did a lot of early sound design for that, but the main guy who did that movie was John Marquis. He did a lot of the creature sound design.
So the job is literally sometimes like, oh, Pokemon, I'm going and watching old media and being like, okay, Charizard in season 2 sounds like this, but Charizard in season 12 sounds like this, and the video game he sounds like this. How do we want to translate? But maybe the dragons in Game of Thrones sound like this, and maybe that's a reference to mixing these things work all together.
Totally.
That's so
you
cool.
got to talk to the director and see how much they want to stay with the original versus how much creative freedom we have to explore new things and try new stuff. One of the funnest things I ever did was on Lego Movie 2. There are the Jurassic Park Raptors. It was so funny because like that, I was such a huge fan of that movie, and I spent like 2 weeks creating sound-alikes for like listening to the original movie and trying to recreate that. And it was really difficult. And I think what we got was pretty close. I was able to get pretty close, but not quite.
And just the interesting question about kind of the workflow of this. Are you making like a sound deck almost? And you're like, okay, you're pulling references and you're like, guys, this is what it sounds like.
As a sound designer, you're always creating way more sounds that end up actually being in the movie, right?
Sure.
You have to just create variation upon variation upon variation. And with Kong or Charizard or whatever, it's like you'll create this option and then present it to the director, and then they give you feedback. And so you create another set that's going in a different direction. He may say, okay, that's really good, but it needs to be a little more screechy, or it needs to be a little more terrifying. Or
Are you matching this to picture, or this is just reference?
Yeah, usually for me, it's way easier to do sound design to picture because if I'm just like blindly creating sounds, I just
out of the ether.
I don't really know how it's going to work in the grand scheme of things, and also again cutting with dialogue and music playing that will tell you a lot of what the sound needs to be.
Last one I wanted to ask about the Quiet Place movies, where they're like that team must have been 2 people, but I'm sure it's that movie must have been probably extremely difficult for.
I get
sound.
that a lot. People are like, "Oh, that must have been really easy because there's no sound."
Yeah,
No, that was one of the most difficult things in my career. We were so exposed, every little sound, every little detail had to be just right. You hear every little footstep and every little creak and every little nuance, and not to mention creating the language and the sounds of these creatures and how they communicate to each other, and what does that creature sound like when he's angry versus when he's curious and hunting, or when he's trying to echolocate things. It's like we had to come up with this whole language of how these things think.
I'm going to hit you with an age-old question that
we were debating.
we always debate this. What would you say is the peak audio level that maybe dialogue or sound effects or music should be hitting.
It's like taking your entire career and boiling it down
Yeah.
to a number.
To a number.
Because it's so in an offline cutting room. Leanne and I literally had a debate about this
all
other
the
day,
time.
where it's just like, should dialogue hit -10? Should it hit -12? And then the -10,
hilarious.
and then there's the -8 freaks out there, and we're all killing each other. We've got knives to each other's throats.
Also, remember that we're receiving it as it was recorded.
Yes.
Right. So when we go to mix it on our end, just so that you can hear it, just so that
Yeah.
it's not blowing out your ears or that you can't hear what they're saying, we have, talked many times about where should dialogue be hitting? Where should like a scream? Where does that hit? Like you don't want to.
Do you peek at a scream or do you not peek at a scream? I've heard
can.
people be.
Yeah.
What
Give
would
us
be
your
your
insight.
advice?
Give us
Let's
your
settle
insight.
it. Settle it for now and for all time. All offlinees from this point
Everyone
forward
listen up.
shall do it at this. That's what we want to know.
-12. Next question.
All right.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
I've been doing it -12 my whole life.
No, I would say, honestly, I actually don't
the
go.
range. What would be
I
the
don't go by
range?
the numbers because I am so much more about setting your room to 85. And then it's actually more.
Okay, explain that.
Feel.
What is even 80? When you say set your room to 85?
So that means when you play pink noise, and you have to use a plugin or something to generate pink noise.
What is pink noise? I don't
Pink
even know
noise
what that
is the same. It's
static?
similar to white noise.
Yes,
but
it's basically static.
It's a lot more bassy sounding than white noise. I should know this.
There's also
technically,
brown noise.
There's
Yeah.
brown
There's a lot of
noise?
different kind
All
of
different
noises.
kinds
They're
of
just
noises.
are they tones or are they? Is it?
Yeah, they're just
or is
different
it-
tones.
It's
Okay,
it
it's
sounds
noise.
like hash.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Okay.
TV hash. Pink noise is like very bassy TV hash. White
Okay.
noise is higher frequency, and I forget the technical
you-
designation.
Have
the
you ever had
difference
someone
between
come
the
in
two.
and pink noise your room?
Never.
Oh, it's happened to me like all the time.
That's why
That's
now
key.
I'm wondering.
yeah.
And that's key. And
Because
that's
said-
actually huge for
Yeah.
collaboration between a cutting room and the sound.
I've never even heard.
Everyone's
the term.
pinked
Yeah.
their room. It's awesome.
It's
So you
called pinking someone's room means
Pinking
setting it to
someone's
the
room.
standard.
Yeah.
I'll let
So
you explain it
Who
to
pinks
Michael
your room?
because I.
Pivotal EPS who?
Well, I'm gonna
Maybe
let
they've
Brandon.
done-
I'm gonna let Brandon explain
you
it.
can
'cause
do
he's
it.
the
It's
sound
really
guy.
I'm curious who's doing it for you. Avitex. They must be doing it
Yeah,
for me,
I
and I don't
did it
even know.
on Batman, Masters of the Air, Project Hail Mary. They have to they come in pink noise your room so that you're collaborated with your editor, so that your editor's speakers are like everybody's
Yeah.
room should sound the same.
At the beginning of the
same
show,
level.
at the
Yes,
setup, at the setup.
at the
I
same
must just
level.
not be in the room when they're doing it, and I've never heard.
Well,
it. That's
usually,
set up
yeah, I
for
think
you.
Ballerina, they did it. They're supposed to come in and do it before the show, so you wouldn't know. But if something gets off, you might have to call them and be like, hey, something's off. Like,
Yeah.
I have this sound effect and it's blasting in my room, but the editor is saying he can't hear it. Can you come and pink noise our room?
Yeah.
And you ask them
Sometimes
to come
the-
because you
Never
know
heard
the
this term.
collaboration is off.
For offline AEs, I've never heard this term.
Yes,
So
this
So your
happens.
your
Pink your
post
room.
facility is pinking your room.
Yeah, they have to come in with
And
tell me
85
what is it called? They come in with
A sound
a
meter or
recorder,
something?
right? Like a pink noise.
No,
What's
it's an
it?
SPL meter.
That's what it's called, an SPL meter.
SPL sound pressure levels. That it's measuring how loud something is over the course of time. And so there's a specific setting. It's called C weighting. It's not measuring peaks. It's measuring the average level of the sound. So
And
play
that should be
pink-
85.
That should be at 85. So you play pink noise out of your speaker and you stand there in front of it. You go to the listening position where you're going to be sitting and you hold the meter right about where your head's going to be. And then you're playing the pink noise and you just adjust the volume until it hits 85 on the meter.
And then you don't
85
touch the
85
volume.
decibels.
You're talking about the big knob. Normally our big knob.
right?
Yeah.
But or actually, for you guys, you have to do it for every single speaker, though.
Yes.
So
On
you
the
have
back.
to,
Oh,
Yeah,
on the,
yeah.
on
so
the
it's probably going to be
tweeter
in
or
the
whatever
back
in the
of
back,
the
whatever it's
speaker,
called.
or if you have like for me, I have an Avid Omni, and so I can control the level of each speaker. So you're actually not. You can adjust it on the speaker, but most of the time you're adjusting it on your outboard
Oh, like a big mixer.
interface. Yeah, so you have to do each speaker by itself, left, center, right. Surrounds, if you're doing film, they have to be set at 82, not at 85. The subwoofer has to be set at something different. So it's actually, you have to be careful when you're doing it.
I know some assistants who have their own SPL meters and they'll bring it to the offices and do it themselves.
That's crazy.
Because you do have to call up, it's probably like Pivotal. You have to call up Pivotal, they have to come out, they have to look at it. So sometimes I think assistants have their own meters so that they can just do it on the fly for for like maybe something quick. But if everything gets out of calibration, like drastically, then you're like, yeah, we need you to come out and we pay.
It's one of those things. It's not terribly hard to do it, but if you have one little thing off, it can be catastrophic.
Yeah.
You know, it could be like if you just don't have that C weighting thing selected, then all of your room's going to be totally off.
Which is also why they probably come out to check it, because if something else is wrong, like with the equipment, then they're there to like switch out a speaker or, get more information.
And most dub stages will pink the room every single morning before the people come in, just to make sure
everything.
You're spending a lot of money to be on those stages.
Because I mean, if you're mixing and one speaker is like 2 dB hot, you're going to be doing everything differently, and then you have to unwind all that if you find out that it's off.
So going back to these levels.
Yeah, right, to the level. So setting your room at 85 is key, because that will tell you everything. Like right away, you'll be like, my God, the dialogue is so hot. It's so loud. I need to turn it down. So if you have your room set to 85, the dialogue should sound comfortable, a little louder than dialogue in real life, but not by much. It should not be uncomfortably loud.
And tell me, what number is this?
Well, because I'm going to say comfortable.
What level number? What is uncomfortable?
But again,
comfortable.
I hate to disappoint you.
Comfortable.
What does that mean?
Subjective.
I know.
It's subjective.
See, I'm literally.
This is why I
had the same
hate.
moments.
I
had the same reaction as Lan. I'm like shaking, and I'm like, "What does comfortable mean?"
Just tell me the number.
Is that 12.5? Is that 8.2?
Well, I'm saying because
it even depends on the voice too, because like some people have.
Well, I know like bassier voices
can
can register higher, and higher
if it's a
voices
harsh
can register.
nasally voice, if they're at minus 12, it's still going to sound really, really loud and like unpleasant. But then someone with a really soothing voice could be hitting minus 8. It's like, I could listen to this all day. So it's, again, I hate to stay away from the numbers, but like for me, most mixers don't use the meter, especially feature film mixers, because there's no technical spec for loudness in feature films. You set it at 85. And mixers are supposed to know how loud everything should be.
So I'm going to do a follow-up question. You are listening to something and you're saying, this is like too low, we have to raise it. And someone else says, no, that's way too high. That's like really loud. No, we have to bring it down. What are you doing in this situation? Because we've said, everybody's hearing, I feel like, is subjective, right? You got people who have lost hearing. You got people who have like really good hearing. So what do you do in these situations?
I thought of the same person.
Honestly, sometimes it gets a little, I mean, at that point, it's just seniority. It's like, okay, if the director's telling you it's too loud, then you have to turn it down. And then some people are just more sensitive to higher frequency stuff. So a sound that doesn't bug me at all will stick out like a sore thumb. Be like, oh my gosh, what is that sound? Turn it way down. And
you're like, what sound? I didn't hear. What are you talking about?
But that's part of the whole mixing process, is you're trying to eliminate as many red flags in there. You're trying to offend as few people as possible with your mix, right? Mm-hmm. So the really good mixers can even decipher, okay, for people who are sensitive to this could be a problem for them. So I'm going to duck it a little bit, even though for me it sounds fine. Or they may have a relationship with the director and they know, stylistically, they really like this kind of thing. So that's where having a good mixer on your team is great, because they can anticipate a lot of that stuff.
I was working on this very, very early in my career, and the director did not like the sound of people kissing.
Oh,
like
I've heard of this.
Snack sounds. Yeah. And it was it was just like pecks. Like it wasn't like, oh my God, they're full on making out. But I remember at one point we had to take that out.
All of it. Yep.
The weirdest thing to see
silent kissing.
It'd be like, yeah, oh, thanks, honey. Let's go. Wow. It was.
So to get to it, the answer is it depends. Between -8 and -12, depending on the sonic signature of the voice.
Not even -8 or -12. It still depends.
No, I would say for you guys, more often than not, go for -12, because most of the time it's too hot. Most of the time when sound effects editors are working on their stuff and they deliver it to the stage, the mixer has to turn it down. We love sound effects. We love everything big. So... And then when we give it to you guys, the picture editor, what do they usually do? Turn it down, right?
Which is, this actually leads into This leads into our next question. When you guys are receiving turnovers, what do you guys need? What do you want? I know that it changes depending on the company or the people that you're working with, but let's just say you personally. What do you prefer to have in your turnovers?
Traditionally, the turnovers will be the QuickTime file, the AAF, the guide tracks, EDLs.
I would love clarification on that because I've always get asked for EDLs. I've gotten asked for picture EDLs, and I'm thinking, what the hell are you using this for? This is like...
I don't use them anymore.
You don't use them anymore.
No, a lot of people don't use them.
Though, he says.
You cutting up the video file to like have the edits?
No, usually the EDL used to be a tool that you could import into your Conform software, and it would help decipher what the change is, and it could be more useful than the change list. Sometimes the
between
change
one
list,
edit and the next. That's okay.
That's the only reason you would need it. I would never need an EDL just for a single.
For someone who doesn't know what an EDL is, it's a text edit document. It's a text document that explains an edit. It
stands for edit decision list.
It's sort of like like 3 kilobytes big. It's literally just text.
In the old days, we had a program called Reconformer, and you could feed it the old EDL and the new EDL, and then you could tell it to compare the two. You could tell the program how in-depth and how aggressive it could be with creating the changes. So you can make a change list from that.
Are you just reading this change list? Like, are you literally just reading it and being like, okay, there's edits here, here, here? Or are you ingesting this in a Pro Tool to put markers down or something?
Not anymore. Now, a lot of people are using this program called Matchbox. And with that, you need very little. You can literally drag in the old picture and the new picture, say...
Oh, the video files.
The video files, yeah.
Wow.
So that's why I don't even use EDLs anymore. You can use EDLs to help you in that process, but I don't. I just put in the picture file and tell it to compare. And
both the EDL for the video and the dialogue, if you're asking for it, or at the time, would strictly be just for Conform?
Yes.
So Matchbox, is this generating a bunch of markers for you, or are you literally reading this?
It's a really cool program, actually. It works in tandem with Pro Tools. So it's its own standalone thing, but it communicates to Pro Tools. So you put the old picture and the new picture, you tell it to compare the two, it will make a change list for you, and you can scroll through it and you can say, oh, there's a few cuts here, but for me, I'm handling the effects session, and I know there's just dialogue here. That's the only thing that's moving around, and it's just ambience through that whole side. So I'm going to say skip these changes because I know that it's just the background ambience that's going to carry through that scene. So you can tell it how in depth to go. And then at the end, you say, okay, conform my session, and it will switch over to Pro Tools. At that point, you've put your
Sorry, our music editor, that's what he uses because he showed
Matchbox.
it to me.
Yeah.
And I now
Why do we get no cool
it,
tools? We have no cool tools in Avid. Everybody else gets cool fucking tools. The visual effects team has cool tools.
I know,
The sound team has cool tools.
I have to manually conform
do everything myself.
the sound effects that you guys send us. Yeah, we have to we gang up the old session and
That's
the
why
new session.
everything is like this. We're so old.
So for turnovers, you get picture guide tracks.
yes.
That's what you want. And then EDLs.
Now that's just that's included in a traditional turnover. So a lot of that stuff, I mean, it depends on the team, obviously. I know some people who still really rely on those EDLs to use their conforms, but I don't use them. If you give me guide tracks, QuickTime, and an AAF, I'm happy. That's really all I need.
Well, this kind of dovetails into our last question. You know, one of the things we always like to do is, again, try to unify all of our various departments and all of our different specialties together. What is something that you wish offline AEs and an offline picture department better understood about the sound world that maybe has caused friction in the past between communication? What's an area of improvement in order to better unify our departments, basically?
What do we do that pisses you off?
What are we fucking up?
How are we annoying
And then we're gonna rant to you about you guys and tell you what you're doing wrong.
You're gonna get your rant as well.
Well, it's a good thing we've never worked together because I'm not talking about work that you guys
have done.
Yeah.
No, but even if I feel like we can all learn. Like there's things
that's a great question.
You know,
so for me, I whenever I get a really clearly organized AF, it is just like music to my ears. You know, consistency, the same things are on the same track every time. You can clearly see when new material is added. You can see the stem that we provided to you, and then you can see very clearly where it's been muted and where other things have been added below it. I've worked on some some shows where the AAFs are just all over the place. There's going to be sound effects up in the dialogue tracks, and there's a dialogue line down at the bottom by the music, and it's like all over the place. It takes a lot of time to scan through those AAFs, and we always go through and see, okay, what is the picture editor doing? Where have they changed levels? What's new? What's old? And just being able to clock all that really quickly with a really well organized AF, that is just everything. Because when things are happening fast and you have to get a new turnover, you have to conform it really fast to get it back up on the stage really quickly. You don't have time to like go through with a fine-tooth comb and like try to find that one little sound in the AAF. I've even worked with some AEs that will say, we only put new material on this one track. Like any new ADR line that comes in, we save track 5 for that. And so when we get the turnover, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. And I know sometimes with the track count, you don't have the ability to do that because there's too many sounds going around. But I think beyond a really clean, organized AAF, communication is huge. Like whenever I get a heads up saying, hey, we're sending you a new turnover, but the only things that are changed are these couple things. And I know there's 5 cuts, but this doesn't affect dialogue, and we added a new sound effect there. Like a quick email like that.
I think that the biggest, and this is my gripe with all departments, it's not just sound. And I'm not saying that everybody does this. Because you want to know what's frustrating about it, what we're frustrated at. I think one of the more frustrating things is when you give a note for something.
Oh, and it doesn't
and
happen.
It doesn't get
that
done.
Does happen. Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I've had instances. I understand every department has things fall through the cracks. It happens, especially if you're just going through emails until they're actually there in person.
Right.
It might not get fixed. But when you say the same note 5 times and it still doesn't get fixed, that can be a little bit like frustrating. But
that's a real problem.
I have had that happen only, and I think normally it's the context of this, which is like, as an assistant editor, if I'm passing a note, it's because the director or the editor has told me, and they're like, it's normally some weird, specific, hyper-specific note, and it's like the other departments are dealing with a laundry list of other things that we don't even know what they're dealing with. They're whatever. Yeah. I can't think of an exact example, but let's say they're like, I hate the logo on that guy's jacket, or I hate the sound of that woman's heel, whatever it is. And I send that email like, hey, by the way, the director hates the sound of this woman's heel, right? I understand there's always like a laundry list of other things, but sometimes, that one note can just get lost in the thing. And it's like, no, you don't understand. This person has come to me and said this one super hyper specific thing. Yeah. I guarantee you on the next cut, your 50 other changes you made are going to get completely overshadowed by the fact that goddamn heel is still in there.
And I'm not saying that like, oh, it got through the cracks like once. I'm saying like multiple times, several times.
That's not good. That's really not good.
Our last question.
Your dream job to work on.
I would love to work on one of the Dune movies. I love those movies. I love the franchise. I love them stylistically. It just creatively, like, my gosh, I could have so much fun working on something like that. Not just work on a movie like that, but also have time to really go deep, do a lot of recording. A lot of the times I feel like we're just kind of thrust into it and asked to produce a lot of, material quickly. And you kind of have to just, you feel like you're scrambling all the time. You don't really have enough time to really like develop stuff.
Are you normally working on one project at a time, or are you working on like 5 different ones?
Usually it's just one project at a time.
Okay.
It can get a little hairy with hiatuses and things moving around, but on any given week, I will fixate on and focus on just one project.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess one more addendum to that question. I feel like normally I always tell people like on a movie, if you're starting on production to the time that you wrap, it's normally about 9 months. 9 months for offline editorial. Is that similar for sound?
Probably that, but just a little shorter. I'd say on most bigger.
If you're on from beginning to end, all the way through.
It's like 6 months usually.
6 months. Okay.
I have been on a couple shows that went longer than that. One show I was on for almost a full year, but most of the time it's like 6 months. And then if it's a lower budget movie, sometimes just like 2 or 3 months. It can be really quick.
Let's go into our splice and spew.
Splice and spew.
Do you have one, Brandon?
Well, mine has to do with I think humanity really has a problem with being angry at things that they don't understand, right? I think we can all We're all really guilty of that. And when it comes to Chicago-style deep dish pizza, I feel like I'm from Chicago. Now hear me out.
This is too political.
Anyone
You're
who
right.
says they don't like Chicago-style deep dish pizza, I think what they're actually saying is they don't understand it. And it is such a thing of beauty. And I think it being called a pizza is a disservice to it because it is a pizza, but I think people have that in their head as they go in and try it. And it's like, this is not like the slice of Domino's that I want or the it's a very different thing. I almost wish it was called like a pastry, like savory pie lasagna thing, because then people wouldn't be tripped up and say, this isn't pizza. Because it is the most beautiful thing in the world, and you got to give it a chance. But I think if you're calling it pizza in your head, then you're not fully open to it. New York pizza is really good, but Chicago style is just like.
Have you had Gino's? The one that's out here.
I actually have not been to this one. Because I've had the original, and so I don't even want to try this one to like compare.
Okay.
The one out here, I think the best one is Masa of Echo Park. They do a really good job, and that like tastes like you're back in Chicago. But in Chicago, my favorite is Lou Malnati's.
You have a spicy spirit? Do you want me to go? I have one.
I don't have one.
You got to think? I can't go.
Oh, I do have one, but you can go if you want.
I am going to splice. I am not much of a reader, and it's honestly been a long time since I've gotten really into reading. So there's kind of two things I want to splice about, which is one, Bailey and Haruka and one of my best friends, Ned, have all started reading this new book, Dungeon Crawler Carl. And if you haven't read this book is like insane. I'm reading this book. It's candy I can't stop consuming. I feel like it's so wild for me to be like a person who doesn't read a lot, and like literally every possible free moment I have, which is not often, I'm reading Dungeon Crawler Carl. I cannot put this thing down. I am totally obsessed with it. I'm like totally over the moon with this book series. There's so many goddamn books. I'm so sorry to anybody who gets into this. This is a marathon, not a sprint. There's currently 7 books with the 8th one on the way in like a few months. And there's probably going to be like 5 or 6 more books after that. It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy meets Dungeons and Dragons
Could get into that.
meets Hunger Games. The book starts, all of humanity basically dies except for like a few tens million people. This dungeon opens up in the earth, and the dungeon is an alien game show video game that everybody has to real life play through. And they have to like survive 18 levels of this dungeon. If you can get down to the 18th level, you can reclaim Earth. It is so fun. It is so funny.
Carl. All right,
Dungeon Crawler Carl. The audiobook is incredible. Amazon is pushing this audiobook everywhere. They do music, they do sound effects, they do like different voice actors. It's very fun. It's very great. My second splice is I literally bought a Kindle so that these books are massive and I didn't want to carry them around. I bought a Kindle so that I could read these books, and I jailbroke it. And jailbroken Kindles are like God's gift to Earth, and it lasts forever. So it's like I have an iPad, but it's so much better to read on a Kindle.
The police are going to come after you now.
It's legal. It's legal.
Right?
I am not endorsing illegal, illicit activity. It is legal.
All right. I'm going to spew. This is going to be airing so much farther, but it was a very sad week for me. It's probably the saddest week of my life, being a Philly sports fan. Last weekend was hard because not only did the Phillies lose both home games to the fucking LA Dodgers, the Eagles lost, and I also lost in my team that I chose for Survivor Football. So I am out of that couple grand money.
I would just like to say,
and
then don't be political. You called them the fucking Dodgers. That's going to get more hate mail to you than anything I could
we're in LA
say.
right now. You got to watch out.
I know. And then, wait, I'm not done. I'm not done my spew because that was the weekend. That was only the weekend.
Oh, God.
They come to LA. And then I'm thinking, cool, Phillies, like, they don't really have a good chance of winning both Dodgers home games. Like, that doesn't really happen. But they won the first one 8-2. And I'm like, man, like just a little glimmer of hope. I was so superstitious the next day. I had worn my old OG Phillies jersey from 2009, Cliff Lee, they won 8-2. Next day, I brought it into work. I was like, I can't watch because I didn't watch till the top of the 8th last night. So I turned it on at like around the top of the 8th, and then they went into extra innings. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Do I watch? Do I not watch? They didn't go into extra innings last night. What do I do? What do I do? And then our freaking pitcher makes the stupidest play. The Dodgers score, and they win the World Series. And I don't watch hockey, but hockey played that night, the Flyers, and they also lost. So it has been a very, very rough week for me. People know I'm a Phillies fan. They know where my heart is at. I'm there. I'm just talking about it now, and I'm just bringing up a lot of emotions here, all right? I'm just...
Oh my gosh. Yeah, your listeners can't appreciate the pain on your face
tears are
is
streaming
palpable.
down.
Oh my gosh.
Guys, I just...
As a
when it rains
lifelong
and pours.
Raiders fan, I want to hear none of this complaining about how the
I don't
Eagles
care,
are doing.
Michael.
Okay.
I don't even care.
Okay.
Sure. But I guess we should wrap this episode up. Thank you again, Brandon, for coming on. And
My
thank
pleasure.
you for listening to this episode of Sips and Clips. You can catch us on Instagram at Sips and Clips Pod. You can also email us now at sipsandclipspod@gmail.com. And I think that's it, right? Is there anything else that I need to...
No, I think you need to keep on sipping, Leanne.
And we'll keep on clipping.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Sips and Clips is a podcast produced by Leanne McFalls and Michael Susterman. Logo designed by Mike Knoll. Production sound by Cassidy Lagan. Post-production sound by Zach Griffin. Follow us on Instagram at Sips and Clips Pod or email us at sipsandclipspod@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.